There was no DNA test, no blood test, no science at all. So how did ancient civilizations actually know who the real father was? The answer is stranger than you'd think. Today, a paternity test takes 24 hours and costs less than a nice dinner. But for over 99% of human history, that technology didn't exist. Yet fatherhood mattered enormously. For inheritance, for marriage, for family honor, even for who got to eat first at the table. So civilizations had to get creative. Some solutions were surprisingly logical. Others were based on superstition, fear, and even violence. And a few were so strange, they sound made up. Let's go back in time and find out how the ancient world solved a problem we take for granted today. The simplest solution wasn't science. It was law. In ancient Rome, there was a legal principle. The father is whoever the marriage indicates. In plain terms, if a woman was married, her husband was automatically declared the legal father of any child she had. No biology required. No questions asked. This wasn't about truth. It was about order. Ancient societies cared less about biological certainty and more about social certainty. A stable answer that protected inheritance lines and family names. Many other cultures followed a similar rule. In parts of ancient Mesopotamia, marriage contracts explicitly listed children as belonging to the husband, regardless of the circumstances of conception. It was less who's the father, and more who's responsible for this child. A very different question with a very convenient answer. But not every society was satisfied with just a legal fiction. Some wanted proof. One of the oldest and most universal methods? Simply comparing faces. Across ancient Greece, China, and parts of Africa, communities would examine a newborn for resemblance to the alleged father, the shape of the nose, the color of the eyes, even the way the baby cried. Family elders often held real authority in these judgments, and their word could shape a child's entire future. In some Chinese texts, physiognomy, the practice of reading someone's fortune and character through facial features, was even used to argue lineage. If a baby's features seemed to match the father's family line, that was treated as strong evidence. Of course, we know today that resemblance is unreliable. Babies change dramatically in their first year, and shared features can come from either side of the family. But belief in visual proof was powerful enough to settle real disputes, determine inheritance, and even end marriages. Some ancient cultures didn't rely on logic at all. They relied on fear, and sometimes physical danger. In certain trial-by-ordeal systems found in medieval Europe and parts of the ancient Near East, a woman accused of infidelity might be forced to undergo a physical test, holding a hot iron, submerging her hand in boiling water, or drinking a bitter potion believed to reveal guilt. If she survived unharmed, she was declared innocent. And by extension, the husband was confirmed as the father. Ancient religious texts describe similar rituals, where a suspected wife would drink a special mixture, and her physical reaction was believed to reveal the truth. These tests weren't really about biology. They were about power, and about control over women's bodies, through fear of divine or physical punishment. There was no science behind them, but the social consequences were very real. Interestingly, the smartest method used by ancient people wasn't superstition, it was math. Long before genetics, many cultures tracked pregnancy timelines closely. Roman law, for instance, assumed a pregnancy lasted around 10 lunar months, and legal disputes over paternity often came down to counting. Was the child born within a reasonable window after the husband was last present? Midwives across many ancient cultures were considered timing experts. Their testimony about labor length, the child's development, and the estimated conception window could carry real legal weight, sometimes even overriding a husband's suspicion. This is one of the more surprisingly rational systems in ancient paternity determination, using observation and record-keeping instead of appearance or fear. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Some societies didn't define fatherhood by biology at all. In several matrilineal societies, including certain indigenous groups in the Americas and parts of West Africa, inheritance and family identity passed through the mother's line, not the father's. In these cultures, a child's maternal uncle often played the more significant father-like role in terms of responsibility and inheritance, while biological paternity was culturally far less important. This flips the entire Western assumption on its head. The question, who's the father, wasn't always the most important question a society asked. Sometimes, who's the mother's family mattered more. Everything started to shift in the early 20th century, when scientists discovered human blood types. For the first time, there was an actual biological method to exclude possible fathers. If a child's blood type couldn't have come from a particular man, he could be ruled out. It wasn't perfect. Blood typing could only prove someone wasn't the father, not confirm who was. True certainty didn't arrive until the 1980s, when DNA testing became available, permanently changing how paternity was determined. In just one century, humanity went from trial by fire, to 99.9% biological certainty. It's one of the most dramatic leaps in the history of family law and science. So the next time you hear about a DNA test settling a paternity dispute in minutes, remember, for most of human history, the answer to who's the father depended on marriage law, facial resemblance, brutal trials, careful math, or sometimes it didn't matter at all. Fatherhood, it turns out, has always been as much a social idea as a biological one. If you found this as wild as I did, subscribe for more strange truths from history you were never taught in school.